Hello, my wonderfully drowsy time travelers, my fellow lovers of slow-moving history and stories that melt your mind into dreams. Before we begin our journey to the distant past, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If these sleepy stories help you drift off, consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us create more content to lull restless minds to sleep. And if you're feeling extra cozy, leave us a comment. Tell us how long you lasted before dozing off. We love reading your experiences. Now, find your most comfortable position. Let your eyelids grow heavy and allow my voice to guide you into relaxation. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a vast, untouched wilderness. The rain has been falling for hours. A soft, steady hush against the canopy of leaves. Cool mist wraps around your skin. Your feet press into damp earth, mossy, cold, and soft beneath your soles. This is not your time. This is a time without roads, without walls, without warm bread or blankets or roofs overhead. You are hungry, but there are no shelves, no signs, no stoves humming in the corner, only the wild and whatever it offers or hides. Your stomach groans, a slow twist of need beneath your ribs. But where will you turn? What can be trusted? What can be swallowed without regret? The air smells of wet bark and old leaves, something distant, sharp, like rot, a reminder that not everything the forest gives is safe. In the Stone Age, every bite was a gamble. Every berry, every mushroom, every root dug from the earth could soothe your hunger or end your days. You bend down. There's a cluster of red berries on a low shrub, bright, smooth, tempting, but no one told you which ones are safe. There are no books to warn you, no grandmother's voice to guide your hand, only instinct and memory passed down in gestures and cautionary eyes. Some berries, sweet on the tongue, burn your insides slowly. Some mushrooms, soft and delicate, slip you into fever dreams, then never let you wake. A root might look harmless, but inside, a milky poison wait, bitter, violent, dot, invisible, and meat. Ah yes, meat was precious, but meat turned quickly, spoil in a day, even faster in the rain. And you wouldn't always know, not by smell alone. Imagine tearing into a bit of mammoth fat, left too long by the fire the day before. You chew and chew, but something feels wrong. Later, your stomach writhes, your vision blurs. There are no doctors, no pills, only silence and the cold comfort of a cave wall as your body surrenders to what it cannot fight. Water. You might think water was safe, but even that was a quiet trickster. Pools looked clean, clear as glass, but still harbored unseen things, little wriggling lives too small to notice. but large enough to ruin yours. Drinking from the wrong stream meant days of pain, of sickness that drained the strength from your bones, until you could barely move. And still, hunger did not wait. Rain did not stop. There was no market, no menu, only the wild and your fragile hope that this bite, this root, this meat would not be your last. They say people back then were tougher, more in tune with nature, more aware. Perhaps that's true. But that awareness came at a cost. Many lives were lost to bad guesses, to hunger, winning over caution, to not knowing what your body could take until it was too late. Now imagine, curled beneath a lean-to of sticks and damp leaves, rain tapping above your head in slow, patient rhythm. You've eaten something, not much, just enough to quiet the ache, but your tongue still remembers the bitterness. Your thoughts still flicker. Is it safe? Will I wake? The night creeps in, thick, heavy. The fire is low. You shiver, and in that silence, that ancient darkness, the mind drifts into dreams filled with roots and tea and the soft, persistent rain. But not food was danger, not all was death in disguise. Somehow, over time, they learn, by trial, by error, by wisdom passed in small murmurs beside the flame. In part 2, we'll explore how they survived, how they knew what to eat, and how the rainy days were not just for waiting, but for learning, remembering, and surviving the long, uncertain hunger of a world before certainty. Until then, sleep well, traveler, and let the rain in your dreams wash you into stillness. The night has passed, slowly, gently, with the soft murmur of rainfall still whispering through the branches. Your body aches from the cold ground, from curling tightly beneath a fragile roof of branches. But you're still here. The fire, long faded to ash, leaves only a faint warmth in the soil, enough to remind you you made it through another night. And so did they, the people of this forgotten world. They made it, one rainy day at a time, not because they were fearless, but because they remembered, because they paid attention, and they passed what they learned from hand to hand, fire to fire, storm to storm. When you cannot read, you must observe. When there are no books, the land becomes your library. A certain plant grows in dry soil, but never in shade. A certain mushroom clings to birch trees, but not to oak. Some insects hover near poisonous leaves. Others stay away. Small clues, silent lessons, written not in ink, but in the patient language of the earth. Those who noticed lived. Those who didn't were remembered, not by name, but by warning. Perhaps a child once reached for a root with purple veins and did not wait. From that day on, the tribe avoided anything that bled that same hue. Perhaps someone drank from still water after a herd had passed, and their illness became a lesson. Never drink after the animals, never near the tracks. Rainy days were not wasted. They were time to talk, to point, to mimic, to chew leaves slowly, carefully, then spit them out. Taste first, watch, wait. Elders would squat beneath rock overhangs, carving with flint, not pictures for beauty, but shapes that meant something. A leaf, fish, hurl of smoke. These marks weren't art. They were memory, safety, a silent whisper from the past, saying, this one is good, this one is not. Children learned with their eyes, their noses, their skin. They touched everything, tasted what the others did, felt the sting of nettle once, and never again. They watched their parents rub red clay on wounds, mash bark into pulp and press it to the skin, or choose certain herbs only during the rain, when roots were soft, when leaves were full. Everything had a time, a place, a jar. But over the seasons, they gathered this wisdom like dry sticks for a fire, until they knew the mushroom that glowed faintly in moonlight was beautiful, but deadly. Oh wow, they knew the grub that hid beneath wet logs could be eaten raw, soft, nutty, full of the fat they craved. They knew which river stones made sparks, which leaves soothed burns, which moss could be boiled and sipped to calm the stomach. And on rainy days, when the world was too wet to hunt, too slick to run, they would sit, they would listen to the water falling from trees, to the slow drips from cave ceilings. They would hum, they would watch the smoke from their fire curl into the shadows, and they would remember, because forgetting meant danger, and danger was never far. Even rain had rules. Food found on wet days spoiled faster. Firewood needed shelter. Tools rusted if not dried with care. So they learned to build drying racks, to store ash to help light the next flame, to shape hollow stones to catch clean rainwater before it touched the muddy ground. Small things, quiet innovations, born not from ambition, but from need and patience. Each rainy day was a kind of test, and slowly, over many lifetimes, they passed. You sit now, near that same memory, still, listening. The forest is quieter, not silent, just waiting. Somewhere, under the canopy, a root waits to be found. A mushroom waits to be judged. A stream bubbles with secrets, safe or not. And the people of the rain, your distant ancestors, still whisper through the leaves. They didn't just survive the rain. They studied it, learned by it, changed because of it. And in part 3, we will step deeper into the rhythm of their rainy rituals. What did they do when the fire burned low, when the game was gone, when the world was soaked and silent? We'll explore the quiet crafts, the forgotten sounds, of stone age hands shaping survival from rain-soaked stillness. But for now, rest. Let the rhythm of the rain drip slowly into your thoughts, and let the voices of the past sing you to sleep. The clouds still hang low, gray and heavy, like thick wool stretched across the sky. Rain continues its gentle work, dripping, falling, softening everything it touches. The earth is darker now, rich with water, heavy with scent, pine, smoke, damp fur. There is no hunt today, no chase across dry, no echo of hooves in the wind. The world is slow, still, and so the people turn inward. This was the rhythm of rainy days, not wasted days, but quiet ones when the body rests. The hands do not, sheltered beneath overhangs or hidden deep in caves. They worked, not rushed, not loud, but careful, precise, patient. Dot piece of flint is turned in the palm, its surface sharp as memory, its edge coaxed by a rock, tapped again and again. Each stroke deliberate, flakes fall like ash onto a floor of damp leaves. Rain taps above, stone taps below, a rhythm passed from time to time, conversation with silence. Nearby, fibers are twisted, wet bark stripped into strands, pulled, wound, looped around the fingers. Thread becomes rope, rope becomes cord, cord becomes the spine of a trap, a sling, a net for catching fish. When the streams swell, everything is damp. Hands are red from cold, but still they twist, still they shape, because when the world is wet, the mind is free to think, to refine, to prepare. There are no books, no parchment, but learning moves. Hand to hand, a child watches a mother's fingers slowly weaving reeds into a basket. The same motion repeated until it becomes part of the body, until it is known without thinking. A man sits with a lump of red ochre. He grinds it on stone till it stains his fingers. He mixes it with water, or spit, or animal fat. He dips his finger and draws lines, marks, not just for beauty, but for meaning. Maybe he draws the flow of a river. Maybe he marks the shape of a useful leaf. Maybe it's only something he saw in a dream. The cave accepts all. It holds stories, warnings, prayers that no one ever reads, but everyone understands. And through it all, rain hums its low lullaby. It drips from the edge of roofs made of hides and branches. It slides down the curve of the earth. It soaks the bones of the dead, buried deep in forest soil. And it gives, and it teaches, and it waits. Stone Age people did not fight the rain. They lived with it, within it, because it could not be changed, only respected, only answered with quiet work. So they mended, they prepared, they shaped the things that couldn't be made, in sunlight, in haste, knives from antler, hooks from bone, skin softened and sewn, with needles of fish spine, each stitch a slow act of survival, each task a message to the future. We were here, we learned, we endured. The children learned to sit still, to watch the smoke, to listen to old voices, telling the shapes of animals, the patterns of rain, the places where food hides, when the world is quiet, and when the rain slowed, when mist gave way to light, they would rise, with baskets full, tools sharpened, ropes wound tight, and memories tucked deep into muscle and bone. The quiet work of rainy days was never useless. It was the reason they survived the days that followed. In part 4, we'll follow them as the rain stops, as the earth steams, and the world becomes a place of movement again. What did they do with the calm after the storm? Where did they go once the sky cleared? But for now, close your eyes, feel the weight of the wet leaves, the hum of distant thunder, and let the stillness of ancient hands guide you gently into sleep. The clouds have begun to lift, slowly, quietly, not all at once, but in pieces, as if the sky itself were unsure, peeling back its grey blanket, one soft fold at a time. The ground, still soaked, glimmers with pooled water. Sunlight breaks through in gentle shafts, scattered between tree limbs, catching on droplets like little stars. It is warmer now, not by much, but enough to notice, enough to make the people stir. They step out from their shelters, one by one, blinking into the soft light. Their feet squelch in the earth, leaving behind perfect footprints in the mud. And now, with the rain behind them, the work begins again. Fresh water has gathered in stone hollows, clear, still, safe to drink. The streams swell and curl through the land, pulling twigs, leaves, and tiny silver fish along with them. The fish are sluggish in the cool current, easy to catch, easy to trap. So they do. Nets woven on rainy days are now dragged across narrow streams. Woven baskets are lowered into slow eddies, weighted with smooth stones. A stick twitches, a splash, a glint of silver, a meal, and from the forest floor, new life rises. Mushrooms too soft for dry seasons now bloom in secret circles. Some are avoided, remembered from stories of sickness, but others unknown. Familiar shapes, earthy scents, spongy textures, They are harvested with care, picked gently, carried in woven satchels, brought back to the fire. The fire, now crackling with dry kindling, found beneath thick tree roots, where even the rain could not reach. It welcomes them, warms them, sings to them in pops and hisses, and beside it, food is prepared. Fish roasted on sharpened sticks, mushrooms wrapped in leaves, roots simmered slowly in a skin pan, with stones heated in the flames. Steam curls upward, fragrant, earthy, deep, deep, the kind of smell that fills not just the nose, but the heart, the bones. It is not a feast, but it is enough. And as they eat, they speak in soft tones, not loud, not rushed. They share what they saw, where the best mushrooms grew, which stream ran fast, and which had warmed in the sun. Their voices mix with the wind, with the crackling of firewood, with the distant call of a bird overhead. This is the other side of the rain, not just survival, but renewal. The land, once too wet to walk, now gives freely. It repays their patience with nourishment, with beauty. The green is brighter after the rain. The is cleaner. Even the sky, once heavy and brooding, now stretches wide and endless, a pale blue dream. Above the treetops, children run, their feet splash in puddles. Their laughter joins the morning. They leap, slide, play in the softened whirl, unbothered by the mud on their legs or the cold that still lingers in the wind. Rain has passed, and the Stone Age moves again. Tools are gathered, spears checked, knives tested, tracks are read. In the wet soil, signs of deer, boar, even something larger. Hunt may come, or a journey, but not yet. Now, they rest, they gather, they prepare in the sun's quiet return, because the cycle is never done. Rain will come again, so will hunger, so will silence. But for now, they breathe, they remember the stillness, the work done beneath dripping leaves, the hands that shaped their survival from patience. Detailed. In part 5, we will follow them into movement, into travel, into the question of where they went when the rain no longer held them in place. What paths did they follow? What did they search for beyond the shelter of home? But for now, let the soft glow of the fire lull your thoughts. Let the warmth of post-rain air settle over your skin, and let your mind wander into the hush between storms. The days after the rain are soft. Everything holds moisture. Even the stones seem to breathe. The leaves hang heavier. The moss is deeper, and the air carries a cool sweetness, like crushed pine and river mist. This is a time of movement, not rushed, not loud, just steady, purposeful, because the land, once hushed and soaked, has opened again The pathways beneath the trees, worn into the roots by many footsteps, are now visible once more, and so they walk. Stone Age people didn't stay still for long, not by choice. The earth itself asked for movement. Animals moved, water shifted, seasons changed their minds, like winds through branches. So they followed her. Moine songs watched the skies, listened to the trees, and when the storms passed and the sky cleared, they lifted their tools, wrapped their food in hides, and left. No roads, no maps, only memory and markers. Only they could see a twist of a branch, pile of stones, the shape of a hill against the dawn. These were their guides. The ground was soft now. It gave way underfoot, but not dangerously. It welcomed track, clear, fresh, readable. They saw where the deer had fled, where the boar had dug through the wet earth, where birds had nested near water, and they moved toward them, but not as a single march, not in a line, more like a drift, a quiet spread of eyes and ears and instinct. Their world was never silent, even after rain. There was always sound, a bird call, the creak of a branch, the sudden flutter of wings. Their ears listened not for beauty, but for clues. A break in rhythm could mean danger or food. The children were quieter on travel days, watching the faces of the older ones, learning where to step, when to stop, how to read the world as it changed around them. Their legs were short, but they kept up, because walking was life, and stopping too long meant nothing left to eat. Shelter came where it could, a rocky ridge, a fallen tree, the mouth of a cave that hadn't flooded, and when they found a place to rest, even briefly, they prepared again. Stone tools were checked, wood dried by firelight, skins stretched and tied, and food, whatever had been gathered, was shared, not all at once, but slowly, enough to ease the weariness. Nights were colder after rain, but sleep came easier when the body had moved, and the fire was kept alive as long as there was something dry to burn. Sometimes they sang, but not loudly, not for performance, but low melodies that echoed gently into the trees, words without language, just breath and memory, songs to mark the trail, to honor the past, to soothe the both. After long, wet days, and always, always, eyes to the horizon. The people of this world did not chase comfort. They chased rhythm. They moved with the land, not against it. If the berries were gone, they found the roots. If the animals moved west, so did they. They trusted in patterns, in change, in the lessons passed from mouth to ear, in the hush of smoke and damp hides. To us, it may seem like drifting, but to them, it was life, planned, measured, held close. In part 6, we will settle in one of those stops, a place where they stayed a little longer, where they repaired, crafted, prepared for the next turn of weather, and we will see how they made meaning from the stillness that came, not from shelter, but from choice. But for now, let the sound of soft footsteps fade into your thoughts. Let the quiet movement of ancient souls guide you gently into stillness. There were moments, rare and soft, when the land spoke with stillness, when the wind quieted, when the paths opened just wide enough, when the animals moved slowly and the skies remained calm for days. It was then that the people chose to pause, not just to sleep, not just to eat, but to settle for a little while. No village, no fences, just a place that whispered, "Stay." The spot was not chosen by chance. It was shaped by memory, by what the land allowed. There might be a stream nearby, still flowing, but no longer swollen from storm, its banks dry enough to kneel beside, its water clear, cool, safe, a patch of dry ground, slightly raised, shielded by stone or tree, enough space for a fire, enough room to sleep without sinking into the earth, and nearby, signs of food. A tree with bark peeled from past seasons, a place where tubers might still rest beneath the surface, hearth worn by deer. Here they would stay, just for a while. The shelters came first, nothing grand, no walls, no doors, only branches, bent and tied, layered with leaves and hide, a lean-to against the rock, or a dome of willow and moss, enough to break the wind, to hush the rain, to keep the fire's warmth from slipping into the night. And once the shelter stood, the hands got to work. There was always something that needed mending, a broken cord, a dull edge, a skin left too long in the smoke. Sinew was sewed, then pulled tight. Flint was chipped anew, each shard falling like quiet thought into the dirt below. The old became useful again, and the useful became better. Baskets woven in the last rain were patched with new reeds. Fur was combed free of rot. Wood was carved, not quickly, not hurried, but slowly, by hands that had done this 100 times before, by minds that wandered while fingers moved. The children watched, then helped, then worked on their own, not taught by command, but by presence, by patience. They learned the sound of good stone, the smell of spoiled hide, the feel of bark that could bend without breaking. In the pause, there was rhythm. In the waiting, there was life. And as the sun warmed the earth, they spread out. Some gathered kindling, others searched for mushrooms, or dug for roots in the soft soil, and some simply sat, watching, listening, thinking. These still days were not lazy, they were sacred, and to breathe, to notice, to prepare, because they knew the land would change again, the clouds would gather, the animals would shift, the cold would return. But for now, this small place, this pause between storms, was enough. In part 7, we will watch what happens when the sky turns again, when signs of another rain come, not from the clouds, but from the quiet movements of the forest. How did they know it was time to leave? How did they sense what we have long forgotten? Until then, rest in the stillness. Let your breath slow with the earth, and dream of quiet hands working gently beneath an open sky. It never came suddenly. Not the change, not the moment they knew. Rain didn't always announce itself with thunder, or wind, or black clouds crowding the sky. Sometimes it came in silence, in stillness, in a pause that felt too long, too quiet, too heavy. The Stone Age people didn't wait for storms. They felt them long before the first drop touched their skin. They read the land as we might read a page. They noticed when the birds fell quiet, when the insects shifted, when the air grew thick with something unseen, a hush that pressed against the skin, and in that silence they began to move. The fire was not left to die, it was saved. A bundle of embers, tucked in dried moss, wrapped in bark, carried in a pouch close to the chest, a traveling flame, a promise of warmth wherever they stopped next. Tools were gathered, baskets emptied, reeds coiled tight. The shelter was not dismantled with sadness, only care, only calm. They knew they could build it again because they had done this before, many times, in many places. Leaving was part of life, and the signs had spoken. Sometimes it was the smell, the way the forest shifted from sweet to sour, or the sudden cold that crept up from the ground. Sometimes it was a certain light that broke through the leaves in a way that didn't belong. They trusted these signs, not because they understood them, but because they had learned to listen. And the land, when listened to softly, always answered. So they moved quietly together. Their feet made little sound, their breath was steady, their eyes alert, and as they walked, they left behind almost nothing. A dent in the grass, a smoothed patch of stone, ash that would soon be washed clean. No ruins. No ruins were needed, only memory. Each step forward held a lesson from the past. They'd rested, off, they'd once followed, The earth held no trails, but their bodies remembered the way a certain hill rolled gently to the east, the shape of a rock near a split in the stream, the bend in the trees where deer once ran, and if the rain came sooner than expected, they would not panic. They would find cover, wait, listen, because survival didn't come from fear, came from knowing when to be still and when to begin again. In this world, you didn't outrun the storm. You moved in rhythm with it, and when the silence spoke, you answered. In part 8, we'll follow them into the new place, the next pause, the next rhythm. How did they greet the return of the rain? What changed with each new storm? What stayed the same through countless seasons? But for now, let your mind rest. Let the soft quiet of their footsteps echo gently into your dreams. The rain always came back, not always with fury, not always with wind, but always, inevitably. The sky would grow quiet, then restless. The light would shift just enough to change the way the trees looked, the way shadows stretched, and then the first drop, soft, lonely, almost kind, followed by another and another until the rhythm returned. Tap, tap, tap. Not a downpour, not yet, just the familiar voice of something ancient falling again. They had found a place by then, another pause, another hollow in the land that felt like shelter, a shallow cave perhaps, its ceiling streaked with soot from old fires, or a cluster of leaning trees, so close together they made a dry room beneath them. It didn't matter if it leaked a little. What mattered was that it gave them space, room to sit, to wait, to begin the rainy rhythm again. The fire was coaxed to life, not rushed, not forced, slowly, with breath, with care. They fed it with bark peeled before the storm, twigs collected when the skies still held light, bits of dry grass cradled in the palms, as if they were keeping a bird warm. And when the fire finally caught, they spoke less, they listened more. Rain has a way of softening voices, of making words heavier, slower. Outside, the world faded into mist. The edges of everything blurred. Trees became shadows. The stream became a hum. And inside their shelter, time stretched. Food was shared again, not in plenty, but in care. Berries that had lasted, roots sliced thin and roasted near the flames, strips of meat dried from earlier hunts. The children, sleepy from the walk, curled near their mothers, their hair still damp, their cheeks flushed from the chill. They didn't ask why they moved again. They didn't ask when the rain would stop. They simply accepted the new rhythm. Because this was how it always was. When the rain came back, so did the stillness. So did the work. The baskets were unrolled. Tools laid out. Everything checked, cleaned, prepared. And in those long, quiet hours, the old ones would begin to speak, not in lectures, not in stories with beginnings and ends, but in pieces, fragments of memory, warnings wrapped in rhythm, lessons whispered with fingers moving. They spoke of floods that came too fast, of animals that vanished for seasons, of food that once made them sick, and food that saved them. The children listened, not with wide eyes, but with still hands, with open silence. This was how it passed down, the knowledge, caution, the wisdom worn smooth by endless rain. Even the fires and helped quietly, as if it, too, remembered. And the rain thickened, fell heavier now, more certain, more sure. It drummed on the stretched hides above, spattered against stone, rushed through the grasses, in tiny silver rivers. But inside, all was calm. This was not fear. This was the cycle. This was expected. This was life. And tomorrow, the rain might stop again, or not. But they would be ready, because they always were, because they knew that rain was not the end of the world, only its breath, its whisper, its turning page. In part 9, we will explore the deeper patterns, how the Stone Age people didn't just survive the rain, but followed it, how they read the skies, tracked the seasons, and moved with the great rhythms of water, wind, and time. But now, let the soft hush of storm wrap around your thoughts. Let the sound of rain lead you gently, one drop at a time, into rest. Rain wasn't just something to wait through. It wasn't a problem, or a punishment, or a surprise. It was a pattern, a rhythm, a quiet signal that shaped everything. The people of the Stone Age didn't just survive the rain, they followed it, not blindly, not with fear, but with a kind of respect we can barely imagine now. They knew the rains would return, not always in the same way, not on the same day, but they came like breath returning to the chest, like sleep after a long night of waking. And when the skies began to change, so did the land. Certain grasses grew taller, certain trees darkened in color, insects stirred beneath bark that had been still for weeks, and the people watched, not just with their eyes, but with their whole bodies. They felt it in the wind, in the smell of soil, in the way animals shifted their paths, nesting deeper, moving slower. The rain meant food, sometimes too much, sometimes just enough. It meant roots could be pulled easier, meat could be smoked slowly over damp wood. Streams filled again with fish drawn from deeper waters into shallows warmed by the storm. So the people follow, not to escape the dry, but to reach the balance, that thin, gentle space between flood and thirst. They had no calendar, no lines drawn on stone, only memory, only rhythm, passed in small stories, in gestures, in trails worn not by feet, but by seasons. They remembered the spot where mushrooms rose 3 days after the rain. They remembered where the soil held water long enough for ubers to grow fat and pale beneath it. They remembered which rocks warmed fastest after the sky cleared, where birds returned first to build again. Nothing was random. Even in a world without maps, they mapped with footsteps, with instinct, with quiet. Their migrations were not escapes. They were returns to places they'd known before, to shelters used by ancestors whose names were never spoken, only felt. They knew that if you stayed too long in the wrong place, the land would grow quiet, too quiet. The animals would leave, the plants would change, the fire would feel colder, so they moved, and the rain helped them choose. It drew them along rivers, through valleys carved by storms, to places where the world was soft again, clean again, new again, and each time they listened to the frogs that sang before dawn, to the leaves that curled just so, to the clouds that piled up in the same corner of the sky. They had watched since childhood. This was their science, their sense, their system. No charts, no predictions, just the trust of a people who had given their attention to the world for lifetimes beyond counting. In modern words, we might call it tracking or pattern recognition, but to them it was simply life. The old woman who knew when to plant, the young boy who could hear a storm 2 hills away, the hunter who saw the deer bend its ear just before the rain came. Knowledge didn't need a school. It lived in muscle, in the breath, in the pause before a decision. In part 10, we'll return to their rainy shelters once more and listen closely to the sound of sleep inside those simple structures, because the rain, though often feared by us now, was also comfort. It was lullaby. It was rhythm. It was a song that told them they were safe for just one more night. But for now, let that rhythm carry you. Let it move through your thoughts, like the path of a stream through soft earth, and may you follow it gently into rest. The rain's rhythm softened outside, a gentle percussion on the woven hide stretched above their heads. Inside the shelter, the air was thick with the earthy scent of damp wood and softened leather. The fire's glow flickered low, casting shadows that danced slowly across the rough stone walls, wrapping the small space in a warm, comforting embrace. Here, in the quiet refuge carved from earth and sky, the people of the Stone Age found more than protection from the storm. They found a place to breathe, to rest, and to dream. The rain may have been relentless outside, but within these walls, time moved with a softness all its own. They lay close together on mats woven from reeds, their bodies pressed warm against one another. The children's breaths were slow and even, carried into dreams shaped by the muted rhythm of raindrops. The elders sat quietly near the fire, their fingers tracing familiar patterns in the soft clay or smoothing the worn edges of tools that had shaped countless seasons. The shelter itself was a marvel of careful patience, an understanding a humble construction of bent branches, layered with leaves and animal hides stretched taut. It wasn't a home in the way we think of homes now, but a shelter born of necessity and knowledge, of centuries spent learning how to coax warmth and safety from the wild outside. The rain whispered secrets against the canopy. Each drop spoke of cycles older than memory, the turning of seasons, the dance of water and earth, the endless breath of the planet itself. And inside, those who listened learned to hear the world's deeper stories. The fire crackled softly, a living heartbeat in the stillness. Its light was a gentle promise that no matter how dark or cold the night, there was warmth and life to hold on to. Smoke curled upward, weaving with the scent of wet stone and moss, carrying the quiet prayers of survival. Meals here were simple and slow, carefully prepared morsels that soothed both body and spirit. Roots simmered gently in heated stones, wrapped in animal skins, releasing earthy sweetness into the steam rising above. Mushrooms, gathered with knowledge and caution, were roasted near the fire, their aromas mingling with the smell of smoke and wet earth. Pieces of dried meat, preserved through long days of patience, were softened over embers, eaten with reverence for the life they sustained. No hurried eating here. Each bite was an act of gratitude, a moment to honor the land that gave and the hands that prepared. The meals were shared quietly, voices low and measured, as if to disturb neither the rain outside nor the fragile calm inside. As the night deepened, stories began to flow, not the tales of heroes or battles, but the soft murmurs of memory and teaching. Words passed between generations like sacred gifts, folded into the quiet folds of the shelter. They spoke of which berries were safe to eat after the rain, of how to find clean water even when streams ran muddy, of the hidden dangers lurking beneath shiny leaves or in the soil's embrace. There was no written language here, no scrolls or tablets. Instead, knowledge was passed through touch and gesture, through the careful mimicry of elders and the patient watching of children. The hands that shaped tools, the lips that whispered names of plants and places, the eyes that noted subtle changes in the forest, all were vessels of wisdom. Sleep came gently in this place. It was not forced or hurried. It drifted in on the soft wings of rain sounds and the warmth of gathered bodies. Dreamscapes formed from ancient scents and the slow beat of the fire, folding the sleepers into the earth's eternal rhythm. And while sleep claimed some, others stayed awake, guarding the embers, listening to the pulse of the storm, ready to rise when the rain ceased and the world called again. This was the quiet power of shelter in the Stone Age. not just protection from the elements, but a sacred pause, a place to gather strength, to weave the threads of memory, to listen to the language of rain and earth. As dawn approached, the rain softened to a drizzle, then to a whisper. Outside, the world was slick and shining, every leaf and stone wrapped in delicate glimmers of water. The first birds began to call, tentative songs that filled the wet air with promise. Inside the shelter, breath slowed even more. The fires glowed, dimming, but never fading entirely. The people rested, cradled by the soft hum of rain's farewell, wrapped in the quiet knowledge that life always moved forward. And when the sun finally broke through the mist, spilling gold onto the sodden earth, it would be time to rise again, to stretch limbs stiff from rest, to gather tools and follow the next path the rain would open. But for now, in this moment of stillness, let the shelter's warmth seep into your bones. Let the gentle patter of rain become a lullaby, carrying you softly deeper into dreams. The morning light filtered softly through the thinning veil of mist. Outside the shelter, the world glistened with fresh rain, leaves heavy with droplets that trembled in the gentle breeze. The air carried the clean scent of earth, washed anew, a mingling of wet stone, moss, and distant pine. Within the shelter, the quiet warmth of the dying fire mingled with the soft breaths of sleepers. Bodies lay curled on beds woven from reeds and softened hides, their faces peaceful beneath blankets of fur. The rhythm of rain had passed, but its memory lingered in the steady drip from the leaves above and in the damp earth beneath. Slowly, the people began to stir. Fingers flexed, stretching muscles cooled from the night's rest. Eyes opened to dim light, still heavy with sleep's gentle pull. There was no rush, only the unhurried pace of those who live in tune with the land's own heartbeat. Outside, the ground was soft and forgiving. Footsteps left clear impressions in the rich soil, a reminder of journeys made and those yet to come. The world felt new, refreshed, ready to offer its gifts once more. Gathering near the fire, the people began the quiet work of mourning. Water was drawn from a nearby pool, its surface still and clear beneath the trees. Hands warmed and cupped the cool liquid, lifting it slowly to thirsty lips. The taste was pure and earthy, a simple blessing after the night's rain. Food was prepared with care, drawing from the stores gathered before the storm. Roots and tubers, dug from the softened soil, were cleaned and set to cook slowly. Mushrooms, chosen with practiced knowledge to avoid the bitter and poisonous, were added to the pot, their subtle flavors blending with the sweet earthiness of the roots. Strips of dried meat, preserved through patient drying and smoking, were softened in the simmering broth, releasing a deep, smoky aroma that mingled with the scent of wet leaves and warm fire. The act of eating was slow and mindful, a communion with the land's bounty, a gratitude for its generosity. The children, still sleepy, played quietly nearby, Their small hands explored the wet ground, tracing patterns in the mud, collecting shiny stones and fallen leaves. Their laughter was soft, blending seamlessly with the whisper of wind through branches and the occasional call of a bird returning after the rain. As the meal continued, the elders began to speak softly. Their voices were low and measured, carrying the weight of experience and tradition. They spoke not of distant legends or grand adventures, but of the lessons the rain had taught: how to read the signs in the sky, how to find safe food, how to prepare for the cycles that their words were slow, deliberate, woven into the fabric of the morning, like the smoke curling upward from the fire. They reminded the listeners that the rain was not merely a force to endure, but a guide leading them through seasons, through challenges, through life itself. Tools were checked and mended as the fire burned lower. Flint knives were sharpened against rough stones, their edges honed with patience and skill. Ropes woven from bark fibers were untied and rewound, their strength tested for the journeys ahead. Baskets, patched with reeds gathered on earlier days, were inspected and prepared for gathering. Outside the shelter, the forest stirred with new energy. Leaves glittered with droplets that caught the morning light, creating a tapestry of shining greens and browns. Streams, swollen from the rain, rushed with renewed vigor, their waters clear and cold. Fish darted beneath the surface, quicksilver flashes in the sunlight. The people knew that soon they would move again. The land would call them onward, toward fresh hunting grounds, toward safer waters, toward new places to rest and work. The cycle of waiting and moving, of stillness and action, continued as it had for countless generations. But for now, in this moment of calm between storms, there was peace, a shared quiet that held the warmth of community and the strength of survival. A moment to breathe deeply, to feel the pulse of the earth beneath their feet, to listen to the soft chorus of the world waking after rain. As the day stretched ahead, gentle and full of possibility, the people prepared to rise, to gather their tools, their food, their memories, to step once more into the living landscape, uncharted, unpredictable, endlessly alive. And as they moved, they carried with them the wisdom of rain and shelter, of quiet work and careful listening, the knowledge that life was a rhythm, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, always purring, always turn. Let your breath slow now. Let your thoughts drift like leaves on a stream. Feel the soft earth beneath you, the gentle pulse of rain's memory carrying you deeper into rest. The evening came gently, folding the world into shades of deep blue and soft gray. The sun slipped slowly behind distant hills, its last light brushing the tops of ancient trees with a faint gold. Shadows lengthened, stretching long fingers across the damp earth, where the soft smell of rain still lingered, mingling with the warm, smoky scent rising from small fires. Within the fragile shelters, the people settled once more, their bodies weary from days of movement and waiting. The air was cooler now, the chill brushing softly against skin not yet accustomed to the coming cold. They huddled close to the flickering flames, seeking comfort in the warmth that pushed back the creeping dampness and shadow. The night was a quiet companion. The steady tapping of raindrops had faded, replaced by the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant call of an owl. It was a sound that spoke of mystery and calm, of secrets held deep within the woods and the earth. In the shelter's soft glow, hands moved slowly and carefully, the making of tools, the mending of clothes, the weaving of baskets. These were acts of survival, but also of care. Every stitch, every cut, every knot held meaning, a connection to those who had come before and those who would follow. The firelight caught the faces of the elders, worn and lined, but full of quiet strength. Their eyes reflected the flames, watching the dance of light and shadow as they shared small words and slow, knowing smiles. There was no hurry here, no rush to fill the silence, just the peaceful flow of time measured by breath and heartbeat. Outside, the forest held its breath. The trees swayed gently, their branches whispering in the soft wind. Moss clung to bark, dripping with moisture, and the earth drank deeply from the day's rain, readying itself for the next cycle. Food was simple but precious. Roots roasted slowly in heated stones, their earthy aroma filling the shelter. Mushrooms, gathered with careful hands earlier in the day, were roasted beside the fire, their scent mingling with the sweet smoke. Strips of dried meat, softened by the warmth, were shared quietly, each bite a reminder of the land's generosity and the hard work that brought it to the fire. The children, wrapped in furs, listened quietly to the low voices of the elders. There were no stories of conquest or grand heroes, but tales woven from the earth itself, lessons on the plants that could heal, the signs that warned of danger, the patterns of the stars that guided their movements. These lessons were not told with haste. They were whispered like prayers, carried in the soft cadence of speech that soothed the mind and settled the soul. The children's eyes grew heavy, and soon their breathing slowed, joining the rhythm of the night. Outside, the stars began to appear, pinpricks of light scattered across the darkening sky. They shone faintly through the canopy, ancient beacons that had watched over countless generations. The people looked up, their faces bathed in the cool glow, and felt the deep connection to all that had come before and all that was yet to be. The night stretched on, vast and quiet. Time seemed to slow, folding inward like the petals of a flower closing beneath the moon's soft gaze. Within the shelter, the fire's glow dimmed but never vanished, a steady heartbeat against the stillness. Sleep came easily here, wrapped in the gentle embrace of earth, fire, and sky. Dreams flowed like the streams outside, meandering, soft and full of the whispered stories of rain and renewal. And as the world rested beneath the vast, timeless sky, the people of the Stone Age prepared for another day, another turn in the endless cycle of rain and sun, movement and pause, survival and life. Let your breath grow slow. Let your thoughts drift on the quiet wind. Feel the warmth of the fire, the softness of the earth, the vastness of the sky, and let yourself be carried gently into rest. The first light of morning came not in brightness, but in a softening of the dark. The blackness of night slowly faded into charcoal gray. The trees stood still, their outlines sharpened in the early mist. The ground, damp and cool, held the memory of the storm. Its every footprint deepened, its every scent thickened with wet bark, drenched moss, and the slow rot of leaves. Inside the shelter, breath rose in faint plumes. The fire had faded into a faint orange glow. Coals nestled deep in ash, alive beneath their quiet surface. No one spoke yet, not at first. The hush of dawn was respected, honored, as if the day itself were something sacred, fragile, not to be disturbed too quickly. The older ones rose first, movements slow, deliberate, a quiet hand reaching for a bundle of twigs, a small stir of the coals, a whispered breath coaxing the fire to return. And then a flicker, a single tongue of flame, rising, curling upward, soft and golden. With it came warmth. With it, the morning truly began. One by one, others rose, not with words, but with movement. Blankets of hide pulled back, sleepy limbs stretched, eyes blinking against the pale light creeping in. The children stirred, lost, tucked beneath shared coverings. They blinked slowly, not yet fully here. There was no alarm, no bell, no call to begin the day, only rhythm, the same rhythm as before, the rhythm of the fire, of breath, of the rain that had passed, and the ground that now waited. Breakfast was quiet, not rushed. A few pieces of root warmed on a flat stone. The final strips of dried meat shared carefully. A handful of softened berries, their skins wrinkled but still sweet. They ate close to the fire, their fingers clean and bare. No bowls, no spoons, just touch and warmth. Warmth and the silent gratitude of another day. They listened while they ate, not just to each other, but to everything. The birds had returned, their songs cautious, piercing the mist. Somewhere nearby, a stream moved, its voice swollen from the recent storm, gurgling gently over rocks, smoothed by centuries. This was how they knew that the world was ready again, that the cycle had shifted, that the time to move was near. But there was no rush. Movement didn't come from pressure, but from readiness, and readiness came from listening. So they began to prepare. The shelters, once so carefully built, would be left behind, but not forgotten. They would collapse slowly with time, melt into the earth, their branches become part of the forest again, their stones swallowed by moss and leaf, and that was fine, because the memory of place was enough. Their tools were checked again, flint edges inspected for sharpness, bindings tightened, woven bags shaken clear of insects, fire bundles wrapped with care. The fire itself would not travel, but its spirit would. Embers tucked in dried mushroom caps, wrapped in leather, carried against the chest, a seed of warmth. Now, ready to bloom when needed it. Children helped where they could, small hands picking up twine, gathering leftover bark, offering pebbles they had carried, their importance known only to them. The forest was waking too. Leaves, still dripping, shimmered as the light grew. The calls of birds multiplied. Squirrels darted between branches, and in the distance, the faint rustle of deer, returning to familiar trails. The people did not speak much. They saved their breath for the trail, for watching, for listening. A last glance was cast toward the shelter, not with longing, but with calm. It had served its purpose. It had held the rain at bay. It had cradled sleep. It had given them pause. But now the time to move had come. Feet stepped softly onto the wet ground, one by one, in no particular order, only flow, only instinct. They moved not in a line, but in a loose pattern, each person reading the forest, responding to its cues. The path was not a path in the way we know it. It was a memory, a direction, a rhythm followed by the senses. They would walk until the trees opened, until a clearing whispered to stop, or a ridge promised shelter, or the animals told them they had arrived again at a place of enough. This was not aimless wandering. This was relationship with the land, with the rain, with the cycles that shaped every breath they took. And as they walked, the mist lifted, the trees sparkled, the sky, pale but clear, opened above them. It would rain again. It always did. And when it came, they would be ready again, because they had listened, because they had rested, because they had remembered what the rain had taught. Let your thoughts follow them now, softly, quietly, through the damp woods, over the slow hills, toward another pause, toward another fire. They walked for hours, but time, for them, was not measured in hours. It was measured in the warmth of the sun on the back of the neck, in the way the shadows shifted across the ground, in the heaviness of the air, in the return of birdsong, in the changing scent of the forest floor. They did not march. They wandered with purpose, moving when the land allowed it, pausing when it asked them to. The trees grew thinner as they walked. The canopy above opened in slow degrees, revealing slices of sky, dusted with the soft blush of the late afternoon. Their footsteps were quiet. The wet soil cradled each step, muffling sound, leaving soft impressions that would vanish by morning. Their eyes were always moving, watching the branches above, the movement of small animals in the underbrush, the pattern of moss on stone. Even now, after the storm had passed, the land had more to say. The oldest of them walked in the center, not leading, not following, only steady. Their presence was a quiet anchor, a memory that walked. They remembered places, not names, not coordinates, but sensations. They knew the smell of the tree that marked the crossing of two hidden streams. They knew which ridge bent just slightly northward, offering wind shelter. They remembered the shape of a stone, half buried beneath lichen, a marker left long before by hands now dust. The youngest followed without questions. There was nothing to explain, only to feel, only to absorb. Knowledge came not through words, but through walking. And as the forest shifted again, they saw it, a low clearing lined with white trees. A bend in a stream curling through it like a blue ribbon. The grass was thick and undisturbed, the soil underfoot firm. The wind passed through gently, as if testing their presence. They stopped. No command was given. No one raised a hand. But something in the land said, "Here." But this was the place. They didn't rush to build. They didn't rush to sit. They stood quietly at first, reading. They watched the way the leaves moved. They listened to the stream. They noted the smell, fresh, sweet, opened, died. Then they began, not with noise, but with rhythm. Shelters were shaped from memory, not designed, not planned. Bent branches drawn down into arches, stakes pressed into earth with slow strength, grasses and bark layered in gentle shingled rows. Children gathered stones, being which ones were flat, which ones held heat, which ones made the fire speak louder. The fire came slowly from the ember that had traveled with them, held like a promise, fed like a child, nestled against the chest for miles and hours and lifetimes. When it caught, it was not met with cheer, it was met with breath, a long, slow exhale, the return of something ancient, a breath shared between flame and skin. As dusk gathered around them, they sat, not in rows, not in circles, but where the land cradled them best, on stones, on folded hides, on bare earth, warmed by the sun. The stream sang its evening song, the fire answered, and the people, they listened. Food was gathered again, leaves tested with fingers, snapped and smelled, roots dug from loosened earth, snails, mushrooms, fruits hidden beneath thickets. They knew how to look, not just where, but how, with patience, with reverence, with the understanding that food was never just food. It was memory, it was risk, it was gift. Not everything that looked like food was safe. There were roots that smelled sweet, burned the throat, berries that gleamed in sunlight, but curled the belly into pain. They had learned through mistakes, through watching, through trial and loss. Some plants were tasted only in silence. Touch of tongue to skin, a weight, a heartbeat, a breath. Even then, uncertainty lingered. So they shared knowledge in fragments. Eat this only after frost. Never take it from near the water. If the birds avoid it, you should too. These were lessons passed through tone, gesture, pause, and always with care. Nigh. The meal was simple. Boiled root, roasted nut, a thin broth made rich with patience, not ingredients. They sipped it slowly, letting the warmth settle deep into their bellies. There were no spoons, only cupped hands, bent leaves, hollowed stones. Each sip was a small fire within the chest, each breath afterward. Softer, the sky darkened fully. The stars, so faint behind the storm, now returned. They blinked into view, slowly, gently, as if unsure if they were welcome. The people looked up, not for wonder, but for guidance. The stars were memory. They marked direction, season, change. The elders knew when a certain shape in the sky meant that birds would soon move south, or when another meant the roots would grow heavy with sweetness. Even the flicker of a shooting star was noted, not with fear, but with listening. And then came sleep again, not hurried, not commanded. It arrived like mist, like the slow return of the tide. One by one, they folded into themselves, covered in hides, faces turned toward the sky, or tucked into the crook of an arm. The fire pulsed, the stream murmured, and the wind whispered lullabies through the grasses. Let the quiet of this place hold you now. Let your thoughts rest, like stones warmed by fire, like roots cooled by rain, like breath settling into night. Oh, the night held steady, still and deep, like a great bowl of ink poured over the world. The only movement was in the fire. It breathed in silence, a soft orange glow, pulsing within blackened coals. Not flame, not yet, but life. The wind had quieted. No rustling leaves, no birds calling. Even the stream slowed its song, as if listening to something older than water. The people slept, but not all at once. Some stirred in half-dreams, eyes blinking open beneath fur coverings. Listening, always listening. The sound of night in the forest was not empty. It was a texture, a weight, a low hum beneath the world. The distant creak of a tree under its own weight, the single drop of water falling from a leaf, the shifting of soil as something small moved beneath it, the breath of someone beside you. These sounds were anchors, markers in the dark, proof that the world, even in stillness, was alive. Near the fire, one sat awake, not keeping watch, not out of fear, but because some sleep lightly and carry the quiet well. They watch the sky through a gap in the shelter, the stars still clear, still steady, a soft arc of cold light arching overhead. No need to name them. They had been watched this way for generations, guided by their position, their movement, their return. And now, a certain cluster rose just above the trees, small, bright, sharp. It meant something, not in words, but in feeling, in memory. It meant that a certain flower would soon bloom in the meadows, that fish would move upstream, that the bark of certain trees would peel easier. This was how they knew the land, through the sky, through the scent of wind, through the feel of soil. They didn't speak of it. They didn't need to. Instead, when morning came, they moved as if following instructions, written into the light. The first bird called before dawn, a low, rattling note that echoed through the trees. Others answered. The forest began to rise, not in noise, but in vibration. A squirrel scrambled down a branch. Insects began their morning hum. The air shifted, cool to warm, dark to gray, and one by one they rose again. The coals were stirred. A fresh branch laid gently. The flame returned without resistance, as if it had only been waiting for the right breath. Water was gathered first. The stream, still shaded, ran clear and cold. It held the taste of stone and root and time. They cupped their hands and drank, silently, gratefully. Then they walked, not far, to the edge of the clearing, where the trees grew thick again, where the moss softened underfoot, where the air smelled of deep earth. Here they searched for the first signs, the green shoots just piercing through wet soil, the delicate buds tucked beneath wide leaves, the return of certain beetles beneath loose bark. These were not accidents. They were signals, telling them the season had shifted again. And so, the gathering began. Hands moved slowly, patiently. No rushing, no greed. They took only what was enough. Always leaving more, always watching, always remembering. One plant, peeled and soaked in stream water, could feed 5. Another, bitter unless crushed and left near fire smoke. Void the stomach. Mushrooms grew in clusters near fallen trunks, but not all were touched. Only those with dull caps, dry edges, and a faint scent, like old wood. Children helped too, their small fingers gentle, their eyes wide with focus. This is how they learned, by doing, by listening, by walking beside, by being trusted with the knowledge of life. As gets filled, they returned slowly. The fire waited. The smoke rose in soft ribbons. Pot of stone, blackened from long use, was filled with water. Roots and herbs added slowly, stirred with care. The scent rose, earthy, soft, comforting. It drifted into the trees, into the sky, into memory. They sat again by the fire, around it, near enough to feel the warmth, far enough to give space. No one claimed a seat, no one directed. They simply knew where to be. The meal was quiet. Again, always, each sip a joining of breath and land. And as they ate, someone began to hum, a low sound, wordless, even slow. It wasn't a song, not in the way we think of songs. It was more like a vibration, a sound that matched the fire's crackle, the stream's flow, the wind's hush. One by one, others joined, not in unison, not in melody, just sound, a gathering of voices, each holding part of something, not singing to entertain, but to remember, to honor, to be. And when the hum faded, as gently as it had begun, they were quiet again, not because the sound had ended, but because it had settled into the air, and the air was enough. They would rest again for a while, before the sun rose high, before the animals moved deeper into the woods, before the warmth of the day pulled them forward. But for now, stillness. Let yourself rest in this stillness. Let the rhythm hold you. Let your thoughts drift, like ash from the fire, floating upward into the quiet. The day warmed slowly, not in a rush, but in a gentle easing, a soft pull upward from the cool breath of night. The sun, veiled behind wisps of cloud, cast no harsh glare. Its light sifted through the treetops like fine dust, a golden mist that touched every leaf, every stone, every blade of grass with quiet hands. The forest began to glow, not brightly, but inwardly. The ground, still damp, released its scent with each footfall. Moss pressed gently under bare soles. The bark of trees peeled in loose curls, cool and pliable, beneath exploring fingers. They walked again, not far, not to leave, but to learn, to feel what the storm had changed, to see what the rain had awakened. Some followed the stream, tracking its winding body as it cut through the landscape. The water moved slowly now, full but quiet, its surface dotted with floating leaves, its banks softened by the night's downpour. Small fish flickered in the shallows, their scales caught the morning light, glimmering for a moment, then vanishing into shadow. The stream spoke in its own way, telling stories of what had passed through it. Darkened patches in the sand showed where deer had knelt to drink. Broken twigs suggested a boar had pushed through the underbrush. Haft of fur, snagged on a low branch, hinted at something more silent, something that hunted, but there was no fear, only knowing, only recognition. They understood they shared the land, and in that sharing, each being moved with respect. Elsewhere, others knelt at the base of trees, fingers sifting through the wet soil. They were not searching randomly. They knew the signs, where the moss thickened. A certain tuber might sleep beneath, where the bark was streaked with amber. Resin could be gathered, sticky and sweet, useful for mending and sealing. One knelt beside a low plant with curling leaves, pulling back the soil with patient hands. A root emerged, twisted like a sleeping serpent, its skin thin and pale. They snapped a small piece, brought it to the nose, breathed in deeply. The scent was sharp, bitter, but familiar. Not food, but medicine, crushed and soaked. It would calm the body, ease the fever, soothe the ache of joints too long exposed to cold. This was knowledge not stored in books. It lived in the fingers, in the nose, on the tongue, in the quiet glances passed between generations. They gathered what they needed, never too much, only what could be used, only what could be shared. And when their baskets were full, they returned once more to the clearing. The fire waited, low and warm. Its smoke curled upward into the canopy, joining the thin clouds that drifted overhead. They sat again in the stillness of the midday. Their bodies found their place in the circle, as naturally as stones find their place in the riverbed. The sky above brightened. The light shifted, angled through the trees. Birds called from the branches. Short, sharp notes. No longer the cautious tones of dawn, but the confident language of day. The meal was prepared slowly. Nothing rushed. Every movement mattered. The roots were scraped, sliced, set gently to heat. Leaves were crushed between fingers, their oils rising to meet the air. Stone bowls filled with warm water, set beside the fire to steep. Even the act of boiling was deliberate. They watched the steam. They listened to the soft bubbling sound, waiting for the scent to change, for the water to darken, for the flavor to reveal itself. When it was ready, they drank, sips, not gulps, and in those sips, they tasted more than nourishment. They tasted the land, the past rain, the sunlight drawn through root and leaf. They tasted memory. The children watched, wide-eyed and quiet. They learned not by instruction, but by rhythm, by repetition, by being included. One day, they would prepare the roots. They would choose the leaves. They would know when the steam smelled right. But today, they watched, listened, breathed it all in. And when the meal was done, no scraps were left. Bits of root, a handful of leaves, were scattered into the fire, not wasted, returned, offered back to the place that had given them life. And then a hush again, the kind that only comes after food, after warmth, after a long breath. Some lay down in the grass, bodies stretched beneath the sun, their eyes closed, their chests rose and fell slowly. Others sat quietly, working with their hands, twisting bark into cord, sharpening flint, bead, rubbing oil into dry skin, not speaking, not needing to. The forest joined in the silence. The wind grew soft again, the leaves still. Even the stream slowed its voice, as if it too was resting. Time passed, unmeasured, unbothered, until somewhere far away a raven called, and the sound carried, long and low, across the treetops, across the clearing, into their bones. It meant little, and everything. It was not a sign, only a reminder that the world kept moving, that they, too, would move again, but not yet. Now they would rest. Let your breath follow theirs. Let the quiet fold over you like a soft hide. Let your thoughts drift as smoke drifts, as time drifts, as dreams come. The shadows began to stretch again, not sharply, but with the slow, graceful reach that only late afternoon brings. Light moved across the clearing, like honey, thick and golden, spilling gently down the trunks of trees, resting softly on the backs of sleeping forms. It touched the moss and warmed it. It lit the undersides of leaves from within. It made the smoke of the fire glow like a thin thread of amber rising toward the quiet sky. The people stirred, but only a little, only enough to shift their weight, to turn toward the warmth, to let their eyes flicker open and close again. There was no need for haste. The day was still theirs. The land had not asked them to move. The sky had not darkened. The wind had not changed. All remained soft. All remained slow. One by one, they returned to quiet tasks. A woman took out a stone with a rounded edge, worn smooth from many years of use. She placed it in her palm, pressed it against a nut still in its husk, and cracked it gently, not with force, but with knowledge, a practiced pressure, knowing exactly how much to give. A young boy helped gather the pieces. He scooped the shell fragments carefully, tossing them away from the sitting place, letting them fall into the edges of the forest. There, they would feed insects, return to soil. Another woman older took long strips of bark dried from a previous journey and soaked them in a shallow bowl of water. Her fingers worked slowly, twisting the fibers together, forming a rope as steady as breath. She didn't look at her hands. She didn't need to. Her eyes were elsewhere, on the trees, on the light, on the dance of insects above the fire. Her hands remembered. Far across the clearing, a man walked alone, not away, just toward stillness. He bent to examine a trail of ants, moving steadily along a fallen log. He followed them with his eyes, watched how they weaved and carried, watched how they disappeared beneath a root, carrying something invisible. Nothing was beneath him. No action too small. No creature unworthy of attention. All things moved with purpose. All things had rhythm. A small group gathered at the edge of the stream. They sat with their feet in the water, letting the current pass over their ankles. Their reflections shimmered, and then the water was cool, but not cold, alive with motion, but not loud. They didn't speak, just dipped their hands in slowly, splashing now and then, trailing their fingers in the current as it carried old leaves away. Above, a bird circled. Its wings caught the last edge of sun. It called once, sharp and high, then glided down, disappearing behind a distant hill. The call was answered somewhere deeper in the woods. The people didn't look up. They'd heard it before. They understood its meaning, not a warning, not an omen. Just a voice, a thread in the fabric of day. Near the fire, someone began to hum again, a different tune this time, lower, slower, drifted upward like the smoke. The others didn't join, but they listened. They always listened. The sound wrapped itself around the clearing, around the trunks, around the baskets, around the breath of those who sat still. And when it faded, no one clapped, no one praised. It was not a performance. It was a release, a sound to hold the light in place for just a moment longer. The sun touched the rim of the trees. Its last warmth stretched out thin and delicate, golden threads across bark and grass. They began to prepare again, but not with urgency, only with care. The fire was fed. The stones around it adjusted. Wood gathered from before the storm was brought closer, dry pieces stacked loosely, allowing air to breathe between them. Their shelters were brushed clean, leaves shaken off, fur bedding spread gently to catch what warmth the night would spare. Water was fetched again, this time from further upstream, where the water ran faster, cleaner, cold enough to bite the palm. A new broth was begun, thicker now, with the root they had found, bitter when raw, softened now. In the boiling stone bowl, the scent was strong, earthy, sharp at first, then round, like wet bark and old smoke. They sipped it slowly, let it fill them from inside, let it settle where the tiredness hid. As they drank, the sky darkened further, first to deep blue, then to a velvet gray, and soon stars again, soft, steady, waiting. They looked up, not for answers, but for belonging. The stars were not distant to them. They were part of the same breath, the same silence, the same rhythm. One child pointed, not to a shape, just upward. The others followed the hand. They didn't speak. They didn't name what they saw. They just looked and breathed. Sleep came earlier this night, not from exhaustion, but from fullness, a fullness of food, of silence, of knowing that nothing was needed but this. One by one, they folded into their shelters. The fire glowed steady. The forest darkened softly. The stream whispered lower than before, and the earth beneath them held their weight as it had always done. Let yourself feel that weight now, the weight of being held without question by her, by night, by time.